I want to preface this by saying that the following rant isn't because I'm bitter about my result. I'm obviously not happy about the top 76% finish, but objectively, I feel that EWC was the worst fantasy event of all time. And I don't think it's the fault of the format, although it wasn't great, but the design of the fantasy itself. There should never have been padding for that first game, because one opening best of 3 becomes 3 times more important than the quarters and the semis, than the grand final. It doesn't really matter how deep you went. Obviously, if you had Na'Vi and G2 players, that helped a lot, but how you did in that opening game was disproportionate to anything else. And the crux of this issue is that HLTV rating has been inflated since the introduction of CS2. I've spoken about this before, but basically with MR12, the formula was never adjusted. So things like cast become way more valuable than they used to. And this is why we get numbers like Donk at Kato this year. You never would have got those 1.5 whatever ratings in the old days, all right? It's because of CS2 and MR12 and the formula being the same. But what this means is when you've got these crazy amounts of padding for one BO3 where there's a big, seeding difference, so there's always going to be stomps, is there's massive randomness and luck. You just had to pick the right player in that opening game, and you had a massive head start on anyone else. I know this is how padding works, but normally it's not in the opening best of 3 where you're seeded against worse teams. And I think a really good example of this was Magic's 8th best value for money player. All right, so that means that he was a really good return on investment. He had a 0.98 rating. 0.98 rating at this event. But because he popped off in that game versus MIBR, and in fact, I say popped off, 16 for 9, 17 for 7, it was a stomp and he did fairly well. It wasn't some crazy overperformance, but because of the stomp of it and because of his inflated rating, he got ridiculous amount of points despite being terrible in the game that mattered versus G2 where they got eliminated. So I just think that's a good example of how dumb this padding was, and basically introduced an insane amount of randomness that I think negates from the skill of fantasy. So rant over, pretending the event never happened. Let's just pretend everyone else got a handicap and we'll kick off the season with Blast. Blast Prem full groups, pretty much the same as every single Blast groups ever, where we've got 4 teams in 4 different groups. Top 2 teams of each group go to the playoffs, something or other, I don't know. But they go through. The first team will get padding. The team that comes second goes into the single elimination bracket where they play for the 5th, 6th places. Ultimately, the most important thing is that you want to come first in our groups. And with 4 different groups, that's fairly easy. You can go 2-1-2 or you can go 2-1-1-1. And either of those, you don't need to pick 2 teams from one group. And generally, that's a good rule of thumb with an event like this. We're aiming for first place. We want to get that padding. We want to avoid this elimination bracket. We also definitely want to avoid getting eliminated 3rd or 4th in the group. Let's have a look at the teams. Spirit, they have the most one-sided group. They will be winning this group 100%. The only team that can maybe do something cool here is Heroic. I'm not impressed with Complexity lately. This OG, nope, they're not going to do it. But Heroic's kind of a cool team. I'm interested in them. I want to see how they go. And I think they could even do something to Spirit here, who looked a little shaky versus G2. So yeah, that's interesting. Group B, Vitality should be the team winning this. But I really rate Astralis. I think we're going to be sleeping on Astralis this event. They're not fresh in our memory because they weren't at EWC and their last event of the season, which had those best of ones and stuff. It wasn't the best for them, but I think this is a team that in this sort of environment, group stage, Stan will be playing well. They probably come second, but they could beat Vitality because we have not been loving Vitality lately. They've not looked good. And so Astralis could be one to keep an eye on. Group C is a cluster. I would not be doubling up on this group because it's a weird one that's hard to call. Conventional wisdom would say this is a G2 FaZe group final, and recent form you'd say G2 wins. Normally you'd say FaZe wins. But honestly, I mean, we've got this new Cloud9, which we don't know what to expect from. They could do something cool against a FaZe that looks shaky. NIP have been grinding tier 2. They're not being G2, actually. Nope, scrap that. But Cloud9 could be interesting. Either way, this group scares me, and I don't want to go in too much on it. Group D is a bit more straightforward. Na'Vi VP, that's what we expect to have in the upper final and probably the group final as well. Na'Vi, number 1 team in the world. Expectations are for them to win this group, but VP could do it, although Na'Vi beat them pretty handedly last time they played. But expectations are fairly low for both Big and Liquid. Big's got a new player in Rigon, but Big have just not been good this year or last year. Liquid, I'm excited for this team. I want to see what it looks like. They're not beating VP or Na'Vi straight out the gate. I don't think so. So VP and Na'Vi are the teams to look at here. Fairly straightforward, I think. Let's take a look at some players. So we'll start with Na'Vi, who have seen some big price increases off their recent victories. I think the most notable increases are for Bit and Imma. Imma's way too expensive. That's crazy, man. Bit, you can kind of understand after his performance at EWC, but obviously, I think if you're looking at this, the combo that everyone sees, that everyone's picking is Alexi JL. JL, for some reason, is the second cheapest player in this team. I don't know why, but he is. Despite a 1.16 performance at EWC, yeah, he's obviously the player to pick here. And pairing with Alexi, you barely spent any money at all. That's why that combo is going to be, I think, at least half the teams at this event are going to have that combo. So yeah, if you're thinking about this combo, maybe reconsider because of how common it's going to be. But yeah, it is going to be the go-to. Spirit, I think we're going to have similar situations. I think Chopper, when you look at his performance at EWC, when you look at his price compared to the rest of the team, when you look at the group, he can do a lot for the money. I don't love spending the high 190s for an IGL, but I think it's probably worth getting. Who you pair him with is up to you. We're going to see a lot of Chopper Magix pairings because of the price, but I think Magix is not a good choice generally. I would almost always urge for Zontix. And I think one thing to consider here is that if they stomp OG, if they are stomping these games, which is the expectation, I probably want players that are going to be more involved and a good chance of actually farming. Magix is not one of those players. Shiro is not one of those players. It's Chopper, Zontix, and Donk that go for, I think, almost 80% of the opening kills in this team. So I'd be looking at Zontix Chopper as the classic combo that I've gone every event, or trying to do a Donk draft, or I don't know, just playing around with it. But I think Magix might not be the choice. Vitality, their pricing is basically where it was last event. Messi's seen a price increase, which makes him a little irritating to purchase now because I don't like spending over $200,000 for the 4th best player on a team. It's the same conversation with Magix. I don't want to spend kind of middle of the pack player money on the 4th best player on a team, essentially, is the TLDR. However, Flames, I think, is probably still good value. Similar performances to Sphinx. Didn't have the best last event, but if I'm drafting Vitality, I'm drafting Flames. G2, Snacks is super expensive now. I don't know why he's one of the most picked players. I guess because you can pair him with one of the other G2 players pretty well, but I think you're crazy to get Snacks when Hunter is 6k more. I think Miles is a little too expensive, and that's why everyone's going Nico. He's probably the only player on G2. These two are the only ones that I think are worth their price tag on this team. So I wouldn't double up on G2. I would grab one of these and make the rest of your team elsewhere. FaZe's prices are all fairly much the same as they were last event. I think Rain's maybe slightly more expensive. I think Carrigan's still a bad choice. He had one good game at EWC, but still had like a 0.86 rating. So don't let that cloud your vision. Frozen and Rops are now only 2k apart, so I guess you grab Frozen. But FaZe is just difficult to buy. I think Rain is kind of similar conversation to Hunter, where, yeah, that's an okay price point. Again, it's a similar thing with like the Messi and Magic situation, where it's like, don't want to pay over 200,000 for the 4th best player. Maybe for FaZe, because Rain is arguably more impactful than Rops and Frozen sometimes. There's something to be said though. VP has some good prices. Finally, a team with good prices. Norbert. Norbert's the guy. 188. I think he is the best value pick. He's 1,000 more than Alexi, and I think is going to get you better bang for buck. His performance at EWC was quite good. And I think finally we're seeing this VP click. It took a while, and Norbert was really struggling when Electronic first came into the team. But it feels like the team's getting an understanding of how they want to play and the variance they want to show. And they've mentioned this in interviews, like Electronic spoke about it. I think things are working now, and that means Norbert is now good to pick, especially while he's still sub 190. So I'm going Norbert Electronic as a combo, or Norbert Jame. They're probably the ones I want to go. I'd be avoiding Fame at the moment. His performances haven't been great, and I prefer to spend a little bit more to get Electronic. But the price points are all great across the board for VP. I think Astralis also has some pretty good pricing. I think notably the players I'm interested in are Yabi Stair. Stair at 200,000. He's been performing quite well, to be honest, and sometimes can be better than Yabi and Stown in the right game. So I don't mind Stair at all. I think Yabi is definitely a better choice than Stown if you're looking for big numbers, especially when he is so much cheaper than Stown. He's got pretty similar results. Stown's just a bit more consistent, but with the price difference, I'd be getting Yabi every day. Bro, I'm not so sure about for 195 when Stair's 5k more. I think you're looking at Device, Yabi, or Stair from Astralis. I'm not really drafting Complexity. I just don't think this team is getting out of the group. Heroic, though, I think the most interesting play here is Kixin. The biggest risk with Heroic is that they're in a group with Spirit, but it's not impossible that they could beat Spirit. And Kixin is so cheap that I almost want to categorize him as a must draft. If he wasn't in the same group as Spirit, man, even still, Kixin for 179 is so much better than Snappy or Carrigan for like the same price on a team that will come second in their group. Could even come first. He's a real sleeper pick this event. Would I double up on Heroic? Probably not. But if you wanted to, Kixin with any of them is good. I'm probably looking at Dexter, but Nerds is also great. I mean, yeah, they're really well priced. I'm not drafting Falcons. I'm not recommending Falcons. I don't think they come top 2 in their group. If you believe they will, Snappy's finding a little bit of form lately and you want to get Dupree. Liquid, we're too scared of. We're too scared of Liquid, even though JKS and Yakinta are some of the only players in the 190 bracket that are actually decent. We don't know what to expect. NIP have a really tough group. We don't want to draft them. Big aren't going to make it out. Although Siriuson's really cheap. So if you really want a cheeky, weird budget pick, he could be okay. And maybe they might surprise us and beat VP. They've done it before. So it is possible that they could come second in the group, and Sirison might end up being a really good value pick, but I'm not brave enough to do it. And then we're not looking at Game Legion OG. Cloud9 are interesting. I think if you're going in on this team, Axile is the player to look at. 202k for Axile is great. You've got to remember, there's going to be role changes in this team with Heavy God coming in. Axile is freed up. He's going to have a lot more star positions and ability to really frag out and be an initiative taker. Now he's freed up from these hard anchor positions that he used to play. So I'm really excited to see what Axile looks like in this team. Again, I have a rule of not drafting new teams in the first event they play, but if you wanted to, I'd go Axile, maybe and Heavy God. Just go both of them. Or Axile Inters if you don't want to spend too much. But yeah, I'm avoiding them this event, but I'm very excited to see them play. And we're real with you guys, this was one of the harder events to draft for. I struggled to find things that I didn't think were overdone, or like the money just didn't work out for a lot of drafts. And yeah, it was a funky one. I'll show you what I got to. I'll start by saying I'm not going in on Na'Vi. I decided that, first of all, I didn't want to go Alexi JL, Alexi Bit like everyone else. And I also feel that Norbert for 188 is way better value than Alexi. And if I was getting Norbert, then I didn't want to get Na'Vi because they're in the same group. So that's why I'm not going Na'Vi, and instead I'm doing like an anti-Na'Vi draft. So my safe team then is going to be Spirit. They're going to be the rock of my draft. So I'm going to get 2 Spirit players as the baseline. And I'll get the classic combo of Chopper and Zontix. I've already kind of said my bit about these players, but when we're looking at teams where it's super one-sided, I'm expecting Zontix and Chopper to perform better than Magix would. And Shiro is too expensive and I don't think worth it. Donk is actually worth drafting this event if you want to do a Donk draft. You probably have to get Kicksan or Snappy to do it, but I don't hate it because Donk can really do a lot here, but I prefer to save that 20,000 and get Zontix instead and hopefully still get pretty good results. So a classic combo. At least I'm not going to go into Vitality. You're not going to see me do Chopper, Zontix, Aphex Flames again, let me tell you that much. So we're not getting Vitality. And in fact, I've already said we're getting Norbert. So VP, I think Norbert, such a good value pick. It's all clicking finally. I want him in my draft. For that price, I want him. And if I'm going in on VP, if I'm going to play anti-Na'Vi, well, I may as well go all in, right? So why not? Let's grab Electronic. 204k. With the teams in this group, there's a lot of Dust 2 we'll probably see, which is the map he loves. I just feel like Electronic's looking really good. Great at EWC, things are clicking. I'm happy with this combo, even if Na'Vi is going to be a really difficult opponent for them. Even if they come second in the group, they will beat Heroic, who comes second in Group A. The worst case is if these two teams play each other for second, but I'm just hoping that doesn't happen. It's unlikely to happen. I just hope it doesn't. 198 overall remaining. I'm getting Hunter. He's the only choice at this price that I really want to get. Personally, I would have preferred to have gotten Stare. He was the player I really wanted, but I would have had to have gone Fame, and I didn't want to do that. I don't think that was worth getting Stare over. If I could have gotten Fame and got Yabi, that would have been worth it. I would have done it, but in both of these situations, I'm 2k off. 2k off Stare now, swapping to Fame, 2k off Yabi. Neither really worked for me, so instead I go G2. I think the Astralis are a really good draft this event, and I think Stare is a great player for it. I just couldn't make it work, but I fully encourage you to look at Astralis because I think they're going to be a really good choice and have a good chance of topping their group over Vitality. But ultimately, this is where we ended up, a 2-1-2, the first event of the season. Rolls aren't great, I'll be honest with you, and that was a problem in my last event. These two have okay rolls. I don't love support on Orbit. It only really works just because of the way VP's playstyle works. That support just works on almost every player. But all of them kind of have low activation points, which doesn't make me comfortable. But with the players available, I just couldn't get anything that really clicked properly. So you can see the little irksome things that made me not overly happy with this draft. But ultimately, I have 4 non-IGL riflers. I have a Chopper that's hopefully going to farm in his group anyway. So I have no big detriment to my team, and I think that's the most important thing. So that's going to be my team for Blast. Let me know what you're doing. Don't even talk to me about EWC. I don't want to know. We hate it. We ignore that event ever happened. Let's focus on this one. And as always, good luck.